Rachel, I'm happy to have you on today. Rachel Liaw is joining us. I love how you said that, Rachel. It's like meow, but Liaw. She's a
Exactly.
co-founder and CEO of Fuse Inventory. Almost been around 10 years, Rachel, which in the startup land is practically half a century. So kudos to you.
I've
Kudos to
been
you.
called more ancient by
Yes.
startups.
Yes. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. And yet you're succeeding and even making money, profitable. How about that? How about that?
How
Hmm.
about that? Yes.
How
New
about that?
fair in startup land, especially venture-backed startup land, I would say.
Remarkable. What a unicorn you are in your own way, you know? Hey.
Indeed.
So tell us how it's been being almost now 10 years in. Actually, maybe that's the thread to go into. Yes, of course, what is Fuse Inventory to get clear on that, but then a little bit of what are some of the reflections now having been at it practically 10 years. Obviously, you are in the supply chain space because inventory is the game. Tell us more.
Yeah, so we started the company. We were always AI based, so we used machine learning to do our demand forecast. AI 10 years ago, what
Wow, was
a
not the hot
concept.
thing. Now you're like, now we're in vogue. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we started off in demand forecasting planning space, and have since expanded into becoming a full-blown like inventory management ERP
Mm.
system. So we can do everything from forecasting our inventory to translating it down to the raw materials to calculating your landed unit costs. So it's been very relevant in the last few years, especially this year with all the tariffs. Being able
Yes.
to calculate that unit cost quickly and effectively has definitely been a theme.
Mm. And you do say here you've helped customers reduce the like glut inventory glut 70%, and
Yes,
then
yeah.
also up their
Our
profit.
proprietary
Yeah.
algorithm is really focused around making sure that they have accurate forecasts for their inventory,
Hmm.
where you're able to do things like tag anomalies. So some people just tagged all of 2020 and 21 as an anomaly, but we can do things like marketing events, stock out events, to really get an accurate read of like what is your baseline demand, including your most recent growth as a company. We specialize in working with fast-growing CPG companies, so we
Yeah.
have companies that have been growing, 2x, 3x, 5x year over year.
Hmm.
And so we're just able to give them a pretty accurate view of like what are their needs going forward, and then break that down again all the way down to the raw materials, help them track that cost, make sure that it's
Mm.
actually, following their plans, and
Hmm.
helping them, edit those plans as quickly as possible once things change in the
Yes.
market.
So speaking of like things changing, I'm sure it's been quite a year on the tariff front. So how does something like that impact your technology or the clients then that are relying on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly been impacting the clients the most.
Yeah.
We've, added the ability to change tariffs quickly. I think before it was kind of like
Mm.
a set and forget
Yeah.
feel, but now
Yeah.
it's dynamically changing. You can wake up one morning and then by the afternoon it's a different number. So we've definitely
Yeah.
added those features in to help people
Fun.
on top of it. Yeah, but when you think about like, the theme of like reflecting on the last decade of supply chain, I think there's just been so much change in the industry that while tariffs were kind of a shock, they're just one of many shocks we've had over the lifetime of the company.
Yes, because you went through COVID. What are some of the other shocks you'd see? Like tariffs, of course, is an economic earth
Yeah,
shake. Obviously, COVID, the most tremendous thing probably of our lifetime in terms of just supply chain dissemination.
yes.
What else?
And there was
What
the
else?
post-COVID, whiplash.
Then there was that. Yeah.
I remember we started the company in 2016, had our first beta by 2017, raised a pre-seed round in 2019, and we're like, now we're off to the races. We've raised our round,
Yes.
we're going to grow. And then
Also,
2020 rolled around.
wouldn't you say that, I mean, that was kind of CPG's like beautiful
It was the
air. Like that was
golden
the
moment.
jam. Everyone loved it.
Yes.
I was just listening to a Wall Street Journal piece just talking about how, online, ooh, we like to be in stores instead. We
Yeah, I
like
mean,
to be
that
in
was we
stores.
were working with Glossier, and they were like, "We're
Yes.
never doing retail," and now they're like all about the retail.
Look at that. Anyway, okay. So,
Yeah, so
oh, yeah.
2020 rolls around, everyone just literally stops speaking to us once it's like end of March 2020. Everything's silent, and we started focusing on content, like everyone.
Yes.
And we were talking to people, we're like, yes, there's COVID, there's disruptions, but you need a plan. And I think the general feeling at the time was everyone was like throwing their planners out the window. There are all those memes about like, plans for 2020, 2021, like scratch all of those.
Yeah.
And so people weren't planning. And then by the time 2021 came around, when people realized, especially e-commerce demand continued to soar as people were bored at home.
Yes.
They just couldn't get inventory in time fast enough. And so, we saw all sorts of reasons why there were bottlenecks in 2021, factory shutdowns, global shipping crises, ships getting stuck in the Suez Canal. There were all sorts of disruptions in 2021. So people couldn't get their inventory in time. And then they over forecasted their demand. So by the time all the inventory arrived, they had overbought. It was 22, things were opening up. They didn't clear out that inventory. Just I think industry-wide, most of the inventory cleared up at the end of 2023, even going into 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2024, I would say was like our most normal year, if you can call that normal, because it was right after all the VCs stopped investing in physical goods companies.
Yep.
There's the Bitcoin crash, the crypto crash. VCs were reevaluating their whole model. Brands were reevaluating their whole model around inventory because they had just been through such disruptive supply chains. And so 2024 was the most quote unquote normal year. But, as soon as that was 2025, we had that giant liberation day that just threw everyone to chaos. And it literally felt like the pandemic all over again.
Really?
Talk to us for months. And every conversation was like, we're waiting to have more clarity. And it was like, okay, here's Liberation Day. Everyone's scrambling to reforecast all their inventory with their tariffs and their cash flow. And then it kept changing. And then so people were like, okay, we're going to find out in June or July. And the dates kept moving around. And I think by the end of July, people were like, we're not going to find out. So
we're not. That's the new normal. You don't know.
The new normal is tariffs will change day by day. And you're just going to have to hope that when your ship lands, it's the lowest tariff possible. And
God,
such a difference from how
I am so glad not to be in physical goods.
Yes, it's been quite a year for folks. And the way that tariffs were traditionally done was it would pass through Congress.
Rachel. Yes, exactly.
Even in the first Trump term, there's a fully negotiated trade deal. You had timelines, you had expectations. And now it's Twitter says, it's now this percent. And then the other country's like, wait, it is? And everyone's just nervous waiting for their boat to reach the shore. And the first
waiting for their boat to reach the shore. Oh,
yeah, yes. In the past, you would know what your tariffs were before the boat even left, right? So you'd
Rachel,
have that cash sitting around.
I'm glad you mentioned that though, because that is something that's so, I think, mysterious to people. You don't see where your damn carrot is grown. You don't see where the shoes actually get off the boat, how it gets on the FedEx thing. It's one of those things, I think, in modern society where you're not thinking, unless you're in the space, how is the physical good getting across the ocean? And what is the cost when it gets to the shore?
Or to your house in a package. People don't think about that. And in the past, it was okay, you would carefully negotiate this. You would know what the trade agreement were. You'd have your harmonized tariff code, HTS code. You would know exactly what your cash flow is going to be. And now it's just well, by the time, the boat takes roughly 30 to 45 days, depending on weather. And in 30 to 45 days, your tariff can double or shrink. And so it's really gambling. And so we've seen brands just need to hold on to so much extra cash to cover their tax liability should the boat arrive a day early or a day late and their tariffs change. And so that's been the biggest confusion. And, I think the misunderstanding in the industry is I don't even think that people are 100% anti-tariff. It's not as politicized as it should be. I think what people are frustrated about is just the lack of clarity. The fact that it can arrive.
Markets don't like uncertainty.
You need instead of $500,000 of cash, you suddenly need $2 million of cash to pay off your tariffs when your boat lands. And I think that's been the biggest hurdle in the industry is just now people have to save up all this extra cash that they're not deploying. And retail runs very cash lean. They're not normally sitting on piles of cash. They have their big inventory buys, especially for holiday season. They buy all of this inventory in
months in advance. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
July,
God.
August. A lot of people
So
push their calendars back and like beg their manufacturers to just like, bear with them as their orders were a month late. And then it all starts arriving in September, October. And then, then we have like the Trump Xi summit and it changes. So like in that case, people were like, yay, we now have extra cash. But now we're sitting on cash. What are we going to do with it?
has this then impacted small manufacturers or small companies that are maybe moving big product and are facing this? In other words, has this been a helpful thing to big box retailers, ones who can stomach the extra big costs?
Absolutely. We're seeing
Yeah.
the biggest impact on, small and medium sized,
Yeah.
especially, growing brands because
Yeah.
they have a lot more volatility in their demand. They have to plan for extra inventory, especially if they're selling into the bigger
Mm,
boxes. Like if you're selling into Target and Sephora and Walmart, the way it works is like they place their order and you're just supposed to have that inventory ready.
yeah. And you're going to ship it to them. Yeah.
And you can get some knocks on your vendor scorecard if you don't have that inventory ready to ship to them. But that's a lot of cash to be holding up in your warehouse.
Mm,
And then with the uncertainty around tariffs. And so a lot of brands have stocked up in Q1 knowing that there were some tariffs going to come into place. And then whenever there was like a relief, they try to stock up more. But, by this holiday season, a lot of them have used up that stocked up inventory. They've imported new inventory with higher tariffs. Prices are going up. Like if you look at price trackers.
mhm.
And I think that's, the ones that can absorb it are the big companies because they're like, well, we're just going to sell it at this price. And then the companies that sell into those big companies are like, okay, well, now we have no margin because like you're holding it at this price. Tariffs have increased, say 30, 50% on some items. And, it's the smaller guys, the brands that sell into the big boxes that are really like suffering. And every
Yeah.
time you negotiate your contract with them, it takes several months. So the fact that things are changing so quickly, you're renegotiating your contract. You're like, hey guys, my tariffs went up. Now they're 30%. You renegotiate with them, and halfway through that negotiation, they're now 50%. And then like halfway through that negotiation, they're now 10%. So it just keeps moving around. And it's just very hard for the small guys to manage their cash flow and stay in business.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
we really focused our product around cash flow management because that's just like top of mind for everyone now.
God. So, Rachel, you did the funding round way back. You have not funded more. This seems avant-garde.
We raised another round in 2021, a seed round.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other, what I was leading to was, that seems like avant-garde a bit from startups because it's like, you just raise more and more and more, and you just raise more and more and more. And then hopefully there's an exit, and you hope to hell there is one, because now you have so much money you've raised and you own so little, let's say at that point, which is not a great way, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
How has your growth and your 10 years in maybe dictated your fundraising agenda? Is it been, hey, let's just not do that if we don't need to? Has it been, we don't like it, it's a pain in the butt, so let's not? What would you say?
I think we've always had to be adapting to the markets, and I think what we've seen has just been a tremendous market changes in the last 5 years. When we raised our seed round, everyone was like golden. So it was 2021. If anything, you're like now being knocked for being a 2021 vintage because like, and we actually raised at a very reasonable valuation. I remember at the time, other founder friends were like, you could drive it up more, or you could have a higher valuation. I was like, well, we're going to do in the future. So I've actually been quite happy that we kept it reasonable because we're still, I think if we were to experience the growth that we would want to see, able to raise around in the future. That said, there was a big market crash in 22, 23. VCs reevaluated how, they were funding companies. And then since then, we've mostly seen activity in the quote unquote AI space, but they really mean LLM space. Because, we have AI, we have machine learning, we've got, predictive analytics, but that's not considered quote unquote like the right AI, which is LLMs. And, we're in inventory. The only like thing I can think of applying an LLM to is like you can like query your reports, I guess. But rather than asking a model like show me my best-selling inventory, you could just pull up our best-selling inventory report. And so I don't really find that like driving user behavior in our space. And the reality of supply chain is like we're still trying to get people on the cloud. Like I think like realized made a lot of retailers and brands realize they needed to be on the cloud, but they're still in that transition. And so until that happens, like, I think it's premature to be applying LLMs to that. And then a lot of things that people call AI and LLMs are not. So like transformation of data, that's just automation. Like OCRs existed. Like, so, it's just, there have been improvements in the OCR that we want to capture and we have been building into our product, but I hesitate to call that an LLM or an AI workflow because like, what is an AI workflow anyways? So, without that kind of like hype around LLMs helping us, I just don't see a path where we can fundraise. And our growth, because we saw the changes in the industry. So we as I mentioned, started in demand forecasting and planning. And we were sitting on top of IMS and ERP tools. And the reason why I wouldn't say pivot, but evolved into that as well is because we had partners, like 7 partners in the space. And they all basically got acquired and either sunset or gated off during 22 and 23. And so we were like, well, now we can't partner with them. We have to just build it ourselves. So we've been focused on
Isn't that fun? Oh, okay.
Basically, like all of our partners are gone now. And then we've watched 3 generations of venture-backed demand forecasting and planning companies come and go. So we're like the only one. It's like, it's like, okay,
Godspeed, Rachel. Godspeed.
This isn't a venture backable model. I think there's still, billions of dollars to be made in inventory forecasting and planning, but it's not going to follow the standard SaaS model that I think people are looking for. And, without buzzy, I every time I see our competitors like add in some like AI feature, I'm like, oh, they're fundraising. And then I'll see them maybe raise around.
That's your first clue. Yeah. Oh, their content changed.
They've added LLM features. They're going to be raising around. I talk to customers every day and like, that's not what supply chain customers are asking for. They're just asking for like sell-through reports and cash flow reports. And so it's just been kind of interesting to see that. And I think one thing that a lot of founders overlook is they get reliant on the venture money. And for us, like we've always, utilized that money, but for growing, but we've always made sure we had still a defendable bottom line. And so we were able to transition to being like break even profitable, not very break even profitable. Enough to sustain this new product build that we see as like a massive need in the market. And, it's not to say that we're going to be like a tiny sad exit. I still think there's a lot of money to be made in this industry, but it just may not fit that venture playbook that people are accustomed to. And I understand why the VCs need you to fit certain metrics, need you to fit certain playbooks. But I don't think it's going to work in supply chain. And having been in this field for a long time, like supply chain has room for those exits, just maybe not on the exact same timeline that you expect other SaaS companies to perform.
Totally to back up, Rachel, before you got the 10 years going into here, you have a law degree.
I
do. You have a East Asian Studies degree from Stanford. Totally avant, again, you didn't come from like computational science or whatever, like,
I did minor in computer science. So it's basically the major without,
the same.
You had to like take engineering fundamentals like thermodynamics and chemistry and biology. And I was like, nah. So I just
I'm on the same boat with you. And so, you had that background, you had a company called Paracel. That was great. Is that where the idea for this came? I just want to go to the origin of where did this come from for you spotting this tremendous problem?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I did minor in computer science, majored in East Asian studies. Actually my first job, coming out of school was
software development, legal assistance,
language processing, which I think has been rebranded as LLMs, but I was back when it was NLP. I worked on NLP on Asian languages, so Japanese and Chinese, because those are the languages that I know. And it still was very, breaking edge at the time. The issue at the time was actually a lack of training data, less so than the models. There have been a couple model breakthroughs since then, but what has really changed is the amount of compute and training data. We would always just run out of compute power when we were running these models, and now we can do that. And so it's been interesting to see that industry change so much and become so, popular now.
Yeah.
But I started my career there. experienced a lot of like subtle sexism in the tech industry. So I basically like flipped the table.
Subtle, Rachel? No.
Everyone thought I was like the marketing or admin assistant or like
yeah.
HR, and they'd like ask me for coffee and be like, I'm the developer.
Yeah, get it yourself. No.
Actually, that dude over there is HR, so he can get you the coffee. Yeah, and I basically flipped the table and was like, I'm never doing tech again. So the ultimate irony is now I'm back in tech running a company.
Look at that. You were like, no. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, I went to school at Stanford. All of
all the
like
people
starting tech companies. I was like, I'm never going to be a tech founder. Like, how blasé. And I was like, now I'm a tech founder. But I basically restarted my career in supply chain, took like a 75% pay cut, started in a warehouse packing boxes. It was like, I'm going to, work on physical goods because we still live in a physical world. And I still think that's true. We live in a very physical world, as much as people want to say tech is changing everything. I'm like, well, first of all, your technology runs on physical computers and tablets and phones.
Yeah.
And the chair you're sitting on, the monitor you're using, the webcam that you're using to work, those are all physical goods that had to come from somewhere.
And Rachel, yes, and I love this because I'm all about this analog revolution, which is just like being, in person, feeling people, what's real and so forth. And also, I think one of the pieces to it, Rachel, is like we're in a physical body. We're in a body until that changes.
Until we're like the Matrix, like
we're there, we're still gonna eat food that has to go in the body, and then like there's just so much of that. So I love that you mentioned that, like, no, it's a physical
things. Yes.
It's a physical world, truly. Yes. And I also think that's more how we're meant to be.
During the pandemic, they're like, oh no toilet paper. I'm like, oh, it turns out that's a physical good.
There you go.
But I think people have like kind of forgotten again, and so
people have short memories, Rachel.
I have short memories. Sure. I'm like, remember the supply chain crisis? Still happening.
Remember that? Yeah. It also seems this is why time is such an illusion, because it seems like, oh my gosh, COVID seemed like, you could tell me it was a century ago. I'd be like, but no, it was only
a long time ago.
It's not been a long time.
The supply chain ramifications are still happening. And even before COVID, like working in supply chain, you realize like boats do go on fire. Pirates do.
Yes. Boats do go on fire. Yeah, they do.
They do. They really do.
I think we ended there, Rachel. Both still get on fire.
Look at an email. I'm literally putting out a fire. You're like, okay, got it. There was a fire in the warehouse. There's a fire on the boat. Like, these things do happen. It's not
there were pirates.
Virtual fire here. They're real fires. And there are real pirates stealing inventory.
Rachel Liaw, thank you for being on today. You're the co-founder and CEO of Fuse Inventory. The world is still physical. Boats literally burn.
Still physical, and I think working and being able to combine tech and the physical world, I think has just been a real, like, despite all the headwinds, a real pleasure to kind of like have people, realize that so much of our world is still, trillions of dollars still move by boat, by plane, and they need technology. They're still early in the technology revolution for supply chain. And, that needs to happen for all of us physical humans to operate well.
Until we're not in the bodies, Rachel.
Yes. If you still want carrots in your grocery store and you still want to eat a hamburger made out of beef, like, you got to pay attention to supply chain.
Ta-da. Thank you, Rachel. Good having you.
All right. Thanks.